let's get into the rare earth side, the clear rare earths, because obviously that's the talk of the town. Even on the Samso platform, I've had, over the last month about several videos just on the topic, and I remember my very first time I had a odyssey metals, Brett Hazelden. I said, Brett, you got to explain to us what all this means. What is a good intercept? Is 10 meters good? Is 20?
Yep.
Do we need 50? Do we need 100? And your parts per million, is 300 good?
Yes.
500? 1,000? 2,000? No idea,
Yep.
and I had to go and learn what TREO was and all this kind of stuff. Now today, we're kind of matured to a point where we go, okay, we get all that now, and now it's all about metallurgical issues.
Yes.
Then it went from easily leachable, ionic, non-ionic, and then now it's like, okay, it's really the economics that really plays, because if you've got a big resource, you can beneficiating, they're all doing all that kind of stuff. So the process is matured, is what I'm trying to say. So in your, like you mentioned, the Esperance region, because I'll just give you my view. The Esperance region to me is like the bulk center.
Yeah.
So you get a lot, and if everyone played together, then you could be the place where, if Australia wanted to value add in this sector, this is the best place to be. So what's your opinion on all those comments?
Yeah, so you're right on everything you said. When I started looking into clay-hosted rare earths, one of the things that I think a lot of companies and, going into, we didn't really know much about clay-hosted rare earths here in Australia. We never really explored for them. And it's only in the last 3 years, I think, where this explosion of clay-hosted rare earths coming out everywhere. And what we're finding out is that the story isn't as simple as what we've been taught. In China, you have the typical your ion adsorption clays that are rich in the heavy rare earths, which is what a lot of the companies are interested in. They're probably more higher value. Their clays are obviously ion adsorption, where your rare earths are adsorbed onto the surface of the clay. And when we started doing that here, we found that that is not the case. The rare earths are hosted in secondary minerals within the clays. So they're not your sensu stricto ionic adsorption clays. So I always, like you said, use the term clay-hosted rare earths. And when we look at, I guess, from the geological side of things, I think we know there's a lot of metallurgy that's been done. So a lot of ASX releases that you read from companies will have what the percentage of rare earths were leached using what acids and everything else. And I'm no metallurgist, but I know one thing, that you are not going to get maximum unless you do the mineralogy. And that's one thing that's lacking in most people I spoke to, most companies that I spoke to. They do not understand what minerals are there within the clays. Part of that is because trying to have look at the mineralogy of clays is very hard. If you want to put a clay in a puck and polish it nicely, as you know, clays, they swell, you can't use water, you have to use something else. So there's a difficulty in analysing where the rare earths are sitting within the clays to inform the metallurgy. So metallurgical, they're quite expensive. You send off a sample to ANSTO, it costs a lot of money. So, companies are selecting a few of the samples to do it. And then, of course, the parameters that change are always the acid, the temperature, whether it needs to be, mixed while it's happening. So, but nobody's doing mineralogy. So we have, at the moment, very poor understanding of how these clay-hosted rare earths form. And one of the things that, particularly at Esperance, for example, I think Mount Ridley Mines, they have, a massive area where they have clay-hosted rare earths, but it's not all over the same basement rocks. Copper mines on top of a limestone, right? So you have the petrotherm, they have, so for example, meteor and comet prospects that are on top of, intermediate to mafic rocks. You go to, say, Apollo with investigated resources, their clay-hosted rare earths are sitting on top of felsic volcanics. So we do not have at present any understanding of what exactly controls are good grades. And like you said, what are good grades? In an iron adsorption clay in China, 500 to 1,000 ppm is a great grade because you can easily get most of it out. I think in somewhere in Brazil, I can't remember exactly, it's top of my head what the name of the mine is, they've got 3,000 ppm rare earths, but they only extract 30%, and that's enough for them to be economic, you know, depending on the price of the element you're extracting. If you have heavies and you have 3,000 ppm, you only need to extract 30% for it to be economic. So it's a bit of an exercise to work out exactly, you know, how much it's going to cost to mine, how much it's going to cost to extract, and how much you need to extract. So when you talk about grades, the grades can vary a lot, and I think that's part of the reason why we don't have like a cutoff, or this is a good grade, is because we don't understand exactly how cheap it is to extract. You have to do a whole process to calculate, okay, if I extract 40% of my rare earths from 1,000 ppm, it might be economic depending on what acid you use, you know, how easy it is to just, you know, whether you heap leach it, whether you just get an excavator and just heap leach it, and all those questions. So I think company will need to, if they're going to explore for clay hosted rare earths, they're going to have to go in and just do their own thing in a way, and almost not, I'm not saying ignore other models, but do their own investigations on their own projects, because one of the things that we need to start doing a bit more, and I know that this is happening, there's a whole bunch of projects that have been also funded with the on the academic and industry side. There's a collaborative projects that are going to investigate these questions. They're going to look at mineralogy. I know we have a very, very good researcher here, Dr. Laura Morrissey, who's been looking at, in South Australia in particular, on the peninsula, she's been investigating, you know, these clay-hosted rare earths that form on top of these granites, and where the rare earths come from. So, you know, you have, say, minerals that are within the granite that have the rare earths, like apatite and titanite, and what she finds is that these minerals disappear entirely when weathered, meaning that they were dissolved and the rare earths are now sitting in the clays that are developed on top of them. At Coppermurra, the clays are sitting on a limestone. So these clays...
This is AR3, yeah?
AR3, yes, sorry. So that's an entirely different deposit to your typical clay-hosted that form in situ or weathering or whatever the basement rocks are. Could be even mafic rocks, right? So theirs is, they're sitting on the top of a limestone, and these clays obviously were transported. They didn't form in situ. They form near the base where the clays basically hit the limestone, and it's that interaction that basically causes precipitation of these secondary minerals. So they're not ion adsorption clays. There might be a small portion that's adsorbed, but not very much. These rare earths again are hosted in secondary minerals as well.
But the enrichment is after they got there, or the enrichment is before they got there?
Enrichment was before they got there. Yeah. So the rare earths. There was a really good researcher at the University of Adelaide who's worked on it, and what he found and how he found that these are being transported is he's done a neodymium isotope study, and he found that the neodymium isotopes reflect the surrounding terrains. So the rare earths were there in the beginning, but they weren't distributed near the base. So it was, from my very poor understanding, and Stefan will kill me when I butcher his research. Butcher it. During deposition and formation, where it formed these sort of kind of little estuarine environments in the coastal settings. Yeah. The rise in level and the pH of the water basically controlled what clays developed and where rare earths were concentrated. That is much as I know. If we're going to go into detail, I don't know.
Yeah, I was at the talk.
Yeah. But certainly it was the processes that happened during the deposition that controlled where the rare earths were sitting in that kind of environment. And hopefully that will be published very soon, and then whoever was interested can read that. But again, I'm just saying, with clay-hosted rare earths, it's going to be very hard to narrow down, do I need to look for a felsic rock and clays developed on top of a felsic rock, or do I need to look at a mafic rock?